Hi, I'm Brandon Bowers, pastor of New Life Church, located in Locust, North Carolina. Now, I wanted to say thanks for stopping by and checking out our YouTube channel. I hope that today's message is both encouraging and challenging to you and your walk with Christ. If you're in our area sometime, we would love to have you come check out one of our services, each and every Sunday at 8:45, 10:15, and 11:45. We'd love to have you come out. And I hope that you enjoy today's message.
All right. Well, good morning / afternoon. And so Tony said, how many of you knew our pastor could dance? And then you saw the video and everybody said, now I know he can't dance, right? We had a great time. Kim and I didn't come home with any trophies. However, we did have the opportunity to serve a great cause. If you don't know anything about the Butterfly House in Stanley County, look that up. They're an absolutely wonderful organization. And through the event last night with pre-event donations and pledges and things like that, plus what they brought in last night at the event, they raised $120,000 for the organization. That's incredible. Yeah, it's good. And so they do a great thing for children in our county, and just glad they're here. But here's what I'm excited about today. Is Tony mentioned we are here. Man, this is one of those weeks of our church year that I just get so excited about. I mean, we have Christmas, we have Easter, Kids Jam Week, and we are here. I mean, there's all kinds of things we get excited about. But this just happens to be, it's not that it's better than any of the others. One I just really enjoy because it is at the heart of what our church is all about, serving people's needs. And so we set aside 5 days every year. Now, we do other kind of service projects throughout the year, but we set aside in September 5 days where we intentionally serve our community, serve the needs of our community, our ministry partners like that of the Pregnancy Resource Center. This year, we're actually dividing our care packages. Half of them will go to Albemarle, and half of them will go to Harrisburg. And so we're just hoping that we'll be able to serve their needs there. We'll just touch lives all over this county and even those into the next county. It's going to be great, but opportunities to serve. If you haven't already signed up, you need to do that because slots are filling up fast. I mean, we're having to close out certain events because of the overwhelming response. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing, but there are certain things that we have planned this week that we don't necessarily need 50 volunteers for. We might only need 20. And so we have to close those things out to funnel people towards other projects. And so make sure you go online and see what is still available. And there's just been such an overwhelming response this year. I'm hoping that we even have enough T-shirts. I mean, this is going to be a phenomenal year. But that all starts tonight. And as Tony said, you can start it right now after the service and go down here and donate some blood if you're eligible to do that. They will tell you if you are or if you aren't. But it's just something exciting for us every year, because this week we will potentially touch hundreds of lives. Hundreds. I mean, just tonight with the bags that we pack, 280 care bags tonight, we'll go out and touch 280 young women, families that are perhaps in a crisis pregnancy situation, and they're going to be blessed by our church. We may never see them, we may never know their names, but we're going to touch their lives. It's going to be incredible. And that's going to happen every night this week when we do certain projects. And see, that only adds to what God has already done in our church this year. The last we're 8.5 months into the year. And this year, through our 3 services on Sunday, through events like Kids Jam and other outreach projects, we've seen 81 people make professions of faith this year so far. Isn't that something to celebrate? That's a good thing. And then 42 of those have followed in baptism. That is absolutely incredible, and I don't want us to take that for granted, because that doesn't happen at every church. And I'm not saying we're better than anybody else, but God is doing a special work in our church, and we need to celebrate it. And what better thing to celebrate than people coming to know Christ? That's absolutely incredible. And then add to that, another thing is that just a few years ago, we had very little online presence. We had a website, people could go to that, and we had some audio messages, which that was great. It's a good tool. Glad to have that there. But recently we revamped rebuilt the entire website. Evan and his team are now putting our services online. You know, the sermons are videoed and online so people can watch them. We now have over 150 regular YouTube subscribers. That's people who've signed up and said, I want to know when New Life puts something new up because I want to see it. It's that good. And then we have people watching our services throughout the week all around the world. And so, you look around and you think, how much of an impact is our church having? Much more than you could ever imagine. Much more than you even realize. Because I just can't help but think, God is growing our church. And we're still considered, on the scale of church sizes, we're still considered a small church. And I think, God is using little old New Life to touch lives around the world. And that's incredible. And I'm glad to be a part of that, not just because I'm the pastor. Listen, if I weren't the pastor of this church, I would still want to attend New Life. I would still want to be a part of this church because this is a church that intentionally and strategically acts upon ways to influence the world, the community, and to make a difference. And that's what the church is. That's what the church, the real church, is all about. And I just have to sit back and think how great things can be. I mean, if God has done this much in the last few years, and He's done this much in the last 8.5 months of this year, we got 3.5 months left. Imagine what God could do with the rest of this year if we would just yield ourselves to Him. If we'd say, God, this is your church. You do with us and in us, through us, what you want to do. Man, it would be absolutely incredible. And it just goes right along with what I want to talk to you about today. And why I'm so proud of our church is, we've been in this series about influence. And talking about how God wants us to go out and to make a difference and use our lives. He's given us potential influence. We have to activate that influence. Well, today I want to talk about engaging the world. Enough talk about influence, enough talk about making a difference. Let's actually discuss making it. How do we go out and put all of everything we've been talking and learning into practice? And to do that, here in a moment, we're going to go to Nehemiah. It's a little small book in the Old Testament between Ezra and Esther. And so you can go ahead and try to find that place there so when I get there, you're ready. But first, let me read Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. This has been the foundation for this entire series. Jesus is on a hillside with His disciples and a crowd of people. And this is His most famous sermon from Matthew chapter 5 through Matthew chapter 7. And He gets to His place here in verse 13 where He starts talking about what we've been calling influence, right? He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, if it loses its flavor, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Jesus, He's talking about how we live our lives and the impact that we can make. And He's saying, listen, like salt, when it's added to food, it doesn't go unnoticed. And like a city, and it's at night, it's sitting up on a hill, and its lights are shining out into the distance. It can't go unnoticed. That's the way our lives need to be. Our lives can't lose their flavor. Our lives we can't let them lose their influence. We need to let our lights shine. Our life is a light. Let it shine so that others take notice of it. He said, so that others see it and bring glory to God. But I don't want you to miss this part where he said something about a bowl. Now, he said there's who lights a lamp and then puts it under a bowl? Some versions, it's a candle. If we were to cut the lights off in here, and this is just a small candle, and I were to light this candle, it wouldn't give off much light, but it would give off enough for everyone in here to notice. This is the only light. And though it's small, everyone in here would be able to see it. But then what would happen if I covered that light with that bowl? How much benefit from that small candle are we going to get? Are we going to get any light from it? No, you're not going to be able to see anything. But then worse than that, with that candle being under this bowl, it's going to struggle for what it needs most, right? Oxygen. That candle, that fire has to have oxygen to continue burning. And when it's under this bowl, slowly but surely, might take 30 seconds, it might take a minute, it might take it a little bit longer. But eventually it's going to run out of oxygen, and that flame is going to flicker down until it extinguishes. Well, then it's definitely good for nothing, isn't it? There's no light at all to be seen or unseen. And it paints a vivid picture of what Jesus is talking about here. He's saying what a tragedy it is that we've been given potential influence. We've made that statement. God has given everyone in here the potential to influence and make a difference. What a tragedy it would be to put it under a bowl. In other words, to waste it, to extinguish it, to not use it, not leverage it for the kingdom of God. Instead, hide it. I want to challenge you today not to do that. Don't waste, don't hide your influence, but engage the world. Engage the world. Take some intentional steps, be it today or this week and the week after and the week after that, but begin to take some intentional steps to make the world a better place, to influence people around you, the people that God brings into your life, to make a difference in their life. And we're going to see how exactly to do that from the life of Nehemiah. He lived back in the 5th century BC. He was actually a native to Jerusalem, but he lived hundreds and hundreds of miles away because of Babylonian exile. He lived in Persia. And he was a servant to the king of Persia. But one day he got word that Jerusalem, his hometown, the city where he grew up, was in shambles. It was in ruins. The walls had been knocked down. The gates, it says, were burned with fire. People were living in poverty, and there was lawlessness running rampant. It was just a terrible place to be. And it says that his heart, he was saddened. His spirit was broken. Just think about that. If maybe somebody came to you today and told you, the place where you grew up, your hometown, I don't know, maybe it was a natural disaster, a tornado or a fire just swept through and destroyed virtually everything. Think about how you might feel. You've got all those good memories. You remember running through those streets and all the relationships that you had and who lived here and who lived there and where you first went to school and that kind of thing, and just how devastating you would feel. And that's Nehemiah. But that day he decided, I'm going to do something about it. My life is going to mean something. My life is going to make a difference. And so he set out to engage his world and to make Jerusalem a better place. He didn't know exactly how he was going to do it. He didn't know exactly what it would take, but he knew that he had to do something. And so he takes several steps. And these things are very simple steps that you and I can take to begin today to make a difference, to engage our world, and to enhance our influence. And the first thing that he did, something that we need to begin to do today, is to pray for opportunities to influence others. It's the very first step to making a difference. Just simply pray. Pray for opportunities to influence others. See, I imagine when Nehemiah first heard the news of the devastation in Jerusalem, there was probably a part of him that felt much the way you and I might feel. We look around, maybe in our community or our neighborhood or the place where we work or our school, and we see the conditions, going further and further downhill. We look at our nation and we think, we're not where we used to be. And things seem to be going downward. And we think, I'm just one person. How in the world can I make a difference? What could I possibly do that would make things any better? And I'm sure he felt that way. I'm sure he had those thoughts. But instead of being overwhelmed, instead of giving up, because he's a servant. He doesn't have power. He doesn't have money. He doesn't have authority. But instead of being so discouraged and overwhelmed by the odds against him, Nehemiah says in verse 4, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept And for some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Nehemiah began to ask God, give me an opportunity to do something. Show me what I can do to make my life worthwhile. I have to make a difference. And over the next several verses, we read the words of his prayer. He praised God for who he was. He began to acknowledge, the power and the goodness of God. He confessed his sin. He confessed the sin of his people, of the nation. He began to recall the promises of God, that God would be faithful, that God would forgive of sin when his people would repent and turn back to him. But at the end of his prayer, he got very specific. Nehemiah prayed for an opportunity to influence the king. He prayed for favor. He said in verse 11, Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. I was cupbearer to the king. You see, Nehemiah knew if he was going to have any chance whatsoever of making a difference, if he was going to have any chance of going back to Jerusalem and making the place where he grew up a better place to live, he was going to first have to have influence when it come to the king. He was going to need favor. He couldn't just up and leave. He couldn't just abandon his post. He couldn't, just all of a sudden one day just turn in a resignation and walk out. It didn't work that way. He prayed, God, give me favor. God, give me the ability to influence the king. And God gave Nehemiah exactly what he prayed for. He went in one day. He explained the situation. He asked for a leave of absence. I want to go back to my hometown. I want to help my people. And God not only gave him influence and gave him favor, the king not only granted his request, but he also gave him many of the resources that he would need to accomplish the task that he set out to do. You see, here's what we need to understand and pull from that. You see, what God did for Nehemiah, he's going to do for you. Nehemiah is not an anomaly. He's not the only one. God didn't just set him aside and say, well, I'll do this for Nehemiah, but not for anybody else. No. He's no different than you or me. And if we'll ask, if we'll pray for opportunities to serve and to meet the needs of others, I can guarantee you God will bring those opportunities into our path. He wants us to do those things. That's why Jesus said, let your light shine. Be the salt of the earth. Let people see your good deeds. Bring glory to God with your life. I want you to do these things. You might say, well, what do I pray? What do I say to God? Don't overcomplicate it. It's very simple. We could just begin to get up every morning and pray, God, use me today to make a difference. Give me influence today in someone's life for your glory. I mean, if we would begin to pray, just a simple prayer like that. It's simple, but it's powerful. Just think about the opportunities. Just think about the situations and the circumstances that we might find ourselves in and the doors that would open for us, for God to use us to help someone else and to influence them and to make their life better. It would be absolutely amazing. But another opportunity, another lesson that we need to learn is that we can't stop with prayer. Nehemiah saw prayer as important, and that was a beginning point, but it wasn't the end. Because the next step is to look for opportunities to make a difference. Hey, prayer's huge. Prayer's huge. That's where we begin. We need to ask God, give us opportunities. Let us be an influence. But then we have to look for those opportunities. Can't just sit back, turn a blind eye, or just expect God to just drop those opportunities into our lap. We need to be attentive. Need to be sensitive to the circumstances, situations, and how God's moving and working in our life and in the life of others, so that when the opportunity presents itself, we can seize it. When that door begins to open, we are ready to walk through it. Look for opportunities to make a difference. Nehemiah, he had heard of these deplorable conditions and the situation in Jerusalem. His heart was broken. He prayed, God, give me an opportunity. But you see, he's going to have to open his eyes to recognize that opportunity. Because as it was, there was nothing he could do about it. God, give me an opportunity. and I'm going to be looking for it. And look at what verse 1 through 4 of chapter 2 says. It says, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought before him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before, and so the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you're not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? The king said to me, what is it that you want? See, this is it, isn't it? This is that moment. This is the moment that Nehemiah had been praying for. This is the moment that he had been looking for. You may not realize the gravity of the situation and how big a deal this really is. But for a servant to show a sad countenance in the presence of the king was not to be tolerated. This could have been likely a capital offense. There was nothing to be shown in the presence of the king but gladness and joy, happiness. You didn't want to upset him. And that's why Nehemiah said, I'd never been sad in the presence of the king before. And he says, and when the king asked me, what's wrong with you, man? You just don't look yourself. What's going on? He noted there in verse 2, I was very much afraid. He didn't know what was going to happen. That could have been it for him. But because the king asked, and because Nehemiah had prayed and was looking for an opportunity, he recognized this as that opportunity. Yeah, there were risks. This is a big if. What if? It's a huge chance here. Rolling the dice. But he recognized it as God's opportunity, as a little open door, and he stepped through it. And he shared with the king what was going on in his life and what was on his mind and his heart. You got to think, well, what if he had not been attentive? What if he hadn't been looking for this opportunity? What if Nehemiah had his mind set on God doing a certain thing a certain way? Don't we do that sometimes? We're praying, God, would you give me an opportunity? Would you give me influence? Would you use me? But then we limit him. I want you to use me this way. I want to serve in this capacity, and I want this particular opportunity. And we limit God in his options, when all the while he may have in mind of giving us a different opportunity in a way that we never even thought of. We never even thought of. And if we're not looking for it, guess what? We miss it. We miss that opportunity to make a difference. We're over here, we're looking for, some flash of lightning. We're looking for a burning bush kind of experience. But guess what? As far as I know, that's only happened once in human history. Which leads me to believe that that's probably not going to be the way God speaks to me. That's not going to be the way that opportunities present themselves in my life. It's only happened once. Usually, the opportunities that God gives us to make a difference are much less overt. They're obscure. It might just simply be a need that's gone unmet for a while. Nobody even really notices it. But for some reason on that day, at that particular time, you notice, wow, the thing I hear church people, Pastor, why don't somebody do that? And I'm like, are you somebody? You do that. God gave you the eyes to see that need, right? Or it might be a position that's gone unfulfilled. An area of service that's looking for volunteers and everybody's just passing by. It might be that there's this need out there, there's a cause. Could be outside the church, maybe an organization like the Butterfly House or the Pregnancy Resource Center, one of these other ministry organizations. They're looking for people to help. And everybody else is just paying no attention, not even interested. But for some reason, that cause is just tugging at your heart. You seem to have a passion for it, and you're drawn to it. You see, I believe that these are divine opportunities. These are divine appointments. These are things that God's bringing into our lives. These are needs that are there that God's bringing in, He's putting before us. We just need to be looking for them. When we see those opportunities, we need to take advantage of it. See, they're all around us, I believe, every day. Opportunities to be used by God in great ways to influence others are all around us if we just open our eyes to see them. Just open our eyes, slow down a little bit, and look around. And while we do that, and while we're praying, God use me, God give me influence, we're looking for those opportunities, we should ask God and we should ask ourselves, this is the third step, how we can have the greatest impact. How can I use my life to make the biggest difference? God, what would you have me to do to make the greatest impact? You see, when Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem and he began to look around the city, it says that he during the night, he went around and he surveyed the city and see what all the needs were. He could have focused on a number of things. Like I said, there was poverty. He could have put all of his efforts and all of his time and his energy into raising, the economic welfare of Jerusalem. Lawlessness. He could have spent his time and energy trying to bring back law and order to the society, right? But he didn't do those. He didn't choose those things. He chose to build a wall. I mean, of all the things to do, he chose to build a wall. He thought that that's the thing that I can do to have the greatest impact. Why? Well, there's several reasons. One, just for sheer safety reasons. The walls were important in those days. Keep out invaders, keep out intruders. And so I can bring security and I can bring safety to the city if we rebuild our walls. Another big reason is for the spirit and the morale of the people. Just imagine if you woke up every day and you looked out your window and your neighborhood, the city where you live, just lie in ruins. Whether that was from, vandals or there was rioting or it was a natural disaster, but just imagine, you look out your window every day and all you see is a city or a neighborhood in ruins. People who have lost everything, walking through the streets with nothing more than the clothes on their back, rummaging through rubble to try to find anything of value. Would that be very encouraging to you? Would that be a place that you'd want to live and raise a family? No. And so Nehemiah thought, if I can rebuild the walls, that would be one thing we could do that would be a visible improvement. Everybody's going to notice that. And that's going to lift and raise the morale of the people. With every brick, with every stone that is laid, their morale, their spirit rises with it. And that'll encourage them to do other things, to take on other projects. But then another thing is, he chose this project because he knew it would bring unity. Because he would have to pull on the resources of everybody in Jerusalem. All the people would have to get involved. It would be an opportunity to aid to community, of bringing people together. He said in verse 17 of chapter 2, I said to them, he's talking to the people, you see the trouble we are in. Notice his language. He's not saying, look at the trouble y'all are in, or look at the trouble I'm in. This is our community. This is our city. We're all in this together. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. He recognized that he was just one person, that he needed other people, and that he could aid to a sense of unity if he'd just draw people in. He asked the question, what can I do to have the greatest impact? And God led him to build a wall. Maybe we need to ask that question. God, what can I do to make the biggest difference for you in the world around me? And I want you to understand this. Don't get caught up thinking that the biggest impact or making the greatest difference has to do with numbers. It's not about how many people are affected. It's not about how big the project is. You realize if you affect one life for the kingdom of God, if you affect one life for eternity, that very well could be the greatest impact you could have in that person's life. Now, God's going to use some of you to affect and make a difference in hundreds of people's lives, maybe even thousands. But even if it's just one, for eternity, that's a huge deal. So ask God, what can I do? Number 4, and we've already begun to see this in Nehemiah and his example. Number 4, work on a team with others if possible. It's what we see Nehemiah doing. He understands that, he can't be a lone ranger. He's not going to accomplish this by himself. And I know that people say, well, I'm just sort of the loner type and I'd rather work by myself. Like, hey, I'm an independent type. I like to work by myself. And I can be extremely productive by myself. But I know the value of a team. I understand that working with other people, many times you can get more done, you can tackle bigger projects, and you can have a greater impact when you work with other people. That's what the whole premise of We Are Here Week is. We come together as a church. Tonight there'll probably be 50, 60 people or more here working on these bags, 280 bags. We'll make light work of those bags when this many people show up. But could one person do it? Of course they could. It's just going to take them a while. When we go out the rest of the week, maybe we're at one of the schools and we might be picking weeds, or we might be painting a wall, we might be pressure washing a sidewalk. We may be going through the streets, picking up trash. There's all sorts of things we're going to do this week. One person could go out each night and do these things. One person could do all of these these projects on our list, but it's going to be like a 40-hour work week. But if we get 40 people out on a night, it'll take 1 hour. The power of a team. How, when you work on a team, usually you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And you have a greater impact than you could have on your own. Nehemiah knew the value of a team. That's why he started pulling from the resources in the community. Let's do this. Let's rebuild the wall. Let's take on this project together. Jesus knew the value of a team. Like, he's God in the flesh, right? He didn't need a team, but he asked 12 guys to follow him. He asked 12 men to serve with him because he knew the value of working with others. And we need to understand and recognize that value. Don't ever fall for the lie that you don't need anyone else. You fall for that lie, you'll be less influential, you'll have a less impact, and you're going to be less satisfied. Work with others. God built us for community. Number 5, persist despite criticism. See, when we decide that we're going to use our lives for the glory of God, to build His kingdom, to make a difference in the world around us and in the lives of others, guess what? There's a hard reality to face. People aren't going to like it. There are going to be people who oppose you. There are going to be critics. There's going to be naysayers. There's going to be haters, whatever you want to call it. Especially if you're doing it for the cause of Christ. They'll come out of the woodworks. But here's what we need to remember. Those throughout history who made the greatest difference and who had the most influence weren't the critics. They were the people and the individuals who persisted despite the criticism. I've been just loving this one commercial that I've seen here lately by Chick-fil-A. It's sort of a new one. It has this older fella in there. He's supposed to be Alexander Graham Bell, the guy who invented the telephone. And so he makes this phone call to a friend of his. And he says, "Hey, Tommy, what did you say to me when I said I was going to invent the telephone?" Tommy says, "I told you were crazy." "And what did you say to me this morning when I said I wanted chicken for breakfast?" "I said you were crazy." "That's 0 for 2, pal." And he hangs up the phone. Right? I love that. But it speaks exactly what I'm trying to say. Persist despite the criticism, despite the opposition. Nehemiah faced opposition. Jesus faced opposition. You're going to face it. I'm going to face it. And when we do, we take this last step, what I'm going to leave you with today. Act with godly courage. Act with godly courage. It's going to take courage. It's going to take boldness to have an impact in this world for Christ. To live a godly life and have godly influence takes trusting that God's in control of every situation. And because He's in control, I can act with godly courage. I don't have to shy away. I don't have to back down. See, when Nehemiah, when he and his people started working, they not only faced criticism, they not only faced opposition, but there were people there literally threatening their lives. Basically saying, if you don't stop this work, if you keep this up, if you lay another block, I'm going to kill you. Now just imagine that. You're trying to do something good. You're trying to do what you believe that God has laid on your heart to do, and people are threatening to kill you. That'd be enough for most of us quit right there, wouldn't it? I can't help but think about James, the pastors and those people that serve with him over in India. They face that every day. We don't even know what that's like. They face that every single day. There are pastors that I know, that I've met personally, that lost their life and gave their life for the cause of Christ. But not a one of them backed down. Not a one of them. They wake up every day excited. They wake up just with anticipation and enthusiasm. We're going to go out today, whether it's door to door or have a crusade, and we're going to share the gospel with people. Knowing that there are people out there saying, if you say another thing about Jesus, I'm going to kill you. Just look at the influence. Look at the difference that they're making in their part of the world. It's incredible. Nehemiah, he answered his critics and those who were threatening him in chapter 2, verse 20. He said, the God of heaven will give us success, the confidence, the boldness. He believed God was in control. He believed God was going to give him success. Despite the criticism, despite the threats. And here's just a harsh reality. If you're not receiving any criticism in your life, if you're not being opposed in any way, you're probably not doing anything for the kingdom of God. Because it will come. But if you are, if you're facing it, then press on. Press on. Act with courage. Keep on serving. Keep on working. Keep on volunteering. Keep on making a difference. Keep on being that light. Keep on being the salt. See, chapter 4 lays out the plot that the people had planned against Nehemiah and those building the wall. But those laborers, they went and they prayed, God, we believe this is a worthy cause. We want to bring you glory. We want to do a good thing. We want you to protect us. And it says that they went out and they worked on that wall. They had a tool for working in one hand and they had a sword in the other. They weren't backing down for anything. You see, when we face opposition and criticism, that's not the time to back down. That's the time to push forward. That's the time to ramp it up and work harder. See, because God has a plan and a purpose for every single one of your lives. And His plan is for you to make a difference in your corner of the world, however big or however small that might be. And so to see that happen, to engage your world, maybe you want to take some time today or later this week and review the steps that Nehemiah took. Say, God, which one of these, maybe it's one or more, do I need to take to put myself, to position myself to make a difference, to be that salt, to be that light, so that others take notice and give you glory. All right?